The first thing I noticed was the envelope on the kitchen counter. It was a simple white one, but something about it caught my attention. There was no return address, no stamp, just a name written in familiar handwriting. Jenna. I'd never seen that name before, and yet it felt oddly connected. I didn't recognize the handwriting either, which sent a small chill through me. As far as I knew, Jenna wasn't someone we knew. Not a friend, not a colleague. But there it was, sitting on the counter like it was meant to be seen. My eyes lingered on it for far too long before I finally forced myself to look away. Dinner was waiting for me on the table. A cold plate of pasta, half-eaten. I sat down, mechanically picking up my fork, but my mind was elsewhere. I hadn't even seen her tonight, my wife, Claire. The kitchen light flickered overhead, making the silence feel even heavier. It wasn't unusual, though. She often worked late or went out with her friends, leaving me to fend for myself. But tonight felt different. It wasn't just the missing conversation or the leftover dinner that no one had bothered to clear. It was the tension in the air, like a warning sign that I didn't know how to read. Suddenly, there was the soft click of the front door opening. Footsteps. She was back. I knew it before I even heard her voice. "Hey," she said, her tone casual but a little too forced, as though she was trying to hide something. She came in from the hallway, her eyes flicking briefly to the envelope on the counter before quickly looking away. Her presence filled the space, but there was something in her manner that felt like a stranger's. A coldness I couldn't explain. I turned my head to face her, trying to seem normal. "I didn't hear you come in." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Busy night," she said, setting her bag down with a thud on the counter. "Yeah," I replied, staring at the envelope again. It was impossible not to. There was something about it, something off. She followed my gaze, her body stiffening for just a second, then quickly looking down at her phone. "Don't worry about it. It's nothing," she said, far too quickly, like she was trying to erase the moment. But that didn't sit right with me. Nothing was ever nothing. "Who's Jenna?" I asked casually, though my voice trembled slightly as I spoke. She froze. A long pause. For the briefest second, I thought I saw her eyes flicker with guilt. But then it was gone, replaced by a smile that seemed rehearsed. "Oh, just someone from work," she said, brushing off the question with a wave of her hand. "We've been talking about some project. Nothing serious." I nodded, but I didn't believe her. There was something in her tone that didn't match the words. Something was off. But before I could ask anything else, she changed the subject. "You eating alone tonight?" She walked toward the fridge, her movements too swift, too deliberate. "Yeah," I replied slowly, keeping my focus on the envelope. "I guess I'll finish this." I pointed to my half-eaten pasta. "Unless you want to join me?" But she didn't answer. Instead, she opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of wine, and started pouring herself a glass. I watched her, but my mind wasn't on her anymore. It was on that damn envelope. The way she avoided looking at it. The way she had reacted to the name Jenna. That wasn't just a coincidence. Something was happening. Something I wasn't being told. As Claire poured herself another glass of wine, I couldn't shake the feeling that the envelope on the counter was more than just a piece of mail. The way she'd avoided it, her rushed words, it all felt too calculated. She had always been good at deflecting when something was wrong, but this time, it was different. There was a subtle tension in her voice that told me she wasn't being entirely honest. She set the wine bottle down on the counter and took a long sip from her glass, clearly trying to relax. But I could feel the unspoken words hanging between us, like an invisible thread pulling at my mind. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor as I walked over to the envelope. I didn't pick it up immediately. I just stared at it for a few moments, as if I was trying to figure out what it was telling me. I heard her moving behind me, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. There was something about this moment, this silence, that made everything feel like it was about to shift. I could feel the weight of her presence, the quiet energy that wrapped itself around us. But still, I couldn't take my eyes off the envelope. I could almost hear it whispering to me. "Jared." Claire's voice broke through the stillness, sharp and unnerving. "What are you doing?" I turned to look at her, my stomach sinking as I realized I'd been holding my breath. "I'm just looking at this letter," I said quietly, trying to sound casual. "From Jenna, right?" Claire's eyes immediately flickered to the counter. I saw her jaw tighten, her fingers tightening around the stem of her wine glass. She looked at me like I had just pulled a card from a deck I wasn't supposed to see. "I told you it's nothing," she said, her voice cold now, more clipped than before. I've told you everything you need to know. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. There was no warmth, no affection, just the edge of something hidden beneath the surface. I didn't like how this felt. But I don't understand, Claire. You've been acting strange lately. And this, I motioned to the letter again, isn't helping. She took a step closer to the counter, as if to distance herself from the envelope. She looked at it with an expression I couldn't quite read, then glanced at me again. Jared, she said, this time her voice lower, almost pleading, you're overreacting. Please, let's not make this worse than it already is. Make what worse? I couldn't stop myself from asking. What's going on, Claire? Why are you so afraid of this letter? I don't get it. Her lips parted as though she was going to say something, but she stopped herself. For a moment, her eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the tiniest flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? But it was gone in an instant. Claire had a way of hiding her emotions when she wanted to, and I wasn't going to let this slip by. I stepped forward and reached for the letter, my hand trembling slightly. If it's nothing, I said, then why don't you just open it in front of me? Let's see what's so insignificant about it. Her face turned pale as I picked up the envelope, slowly tearing it open. She moved quickly now, trying to stop me, but it was too late. I'd already unfolded the letter. I glanced at it for only a moment before everything froze. The words on the page were clear, written in Jenna's unmistakable handwriting. But it was the words that stopped my heart cold. I know what you've been doing. I know everything. The truth is coming. I looked up from the letter, my gaze meeting Claire's. Her face was ghostly white now, her hand shaking slightly as she placed her glass down. Jenna, I whispered, feeling a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward me, her footsteps slow, deliberate. You don't understand, she murmured, her voice breaking slightly. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with something I had never seen before, shame. Jared, I didn't want you to know. I thought I could keep it hidden, but now it's too late. I took a step back, my mind racing. Keep what hidden, Claire? What's going on? But before she could answer, the sound of a car door slamming outside caught my attention. I looked out the window, my heart leaping into my throat. A black SUV had pulled up in front of our house. It was parked in the driveway, silent, waiting. Claire's face turned pale, and she grabbed my arm, her fingers tightening. Don't go outside, Jared, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please. But I couldn't stop myself. Something inside me snapped. I had to know. I had to understand what was going on. I pushed past her, my heart pounding in my chest as I reached for the door. Just as I was about to open it, Claire grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. I never wanted this, Jared, she pleaded, her voice breaking. Please, please don't do this. But I couldn't listen. I had to know the truth. I opened the door, stepping outside into the cold night air. The black SUV's headlights flickered on, momentarily blinding me as I made my way toward it. The door opened slowly, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. He didn't say anything, just stood there silently, watching me. He extended his hand, and in it was a small black envelope, the same kind I had just opened. Your wife asked me to give this to you, the man said, his voice cold and emotionless. I reached out and took it, my fingers trembling as I glanced at Claire standing in the doorway. She was watching me with wide eyes, her body tense. And just like that, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The man in the black suit stood there, unmoving, as I took the envelope from his hand. It was cold to the touch, the paper thick and smooth, but there was something about it that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The silence between us felt suffocating, like a thick fog that I couldn't escape. Claire was still standing in the doorway, her face a mixture of fear and desperation, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the envelope in my hand. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. I felt like there was something worse hidden inside it, something I wasn't ready to face. But the longer I stood there, the more I could feel the weight of the situation pulling at me. The man in the suit didn't speak. He didn't have to. His presence alone was enough to make me feel like I was in way over my head. I finally tore the envelope open, my hands shaking, my heart racing. The letter inside was folded neatly, the handwriting unfamiliar but sharp, almost too precise. I unfolded it slowly, the tension in the air rising with each passing second. My eyes scanned the page quickly, and as I read the first line, my stomach dropped. You're not who you think you are? The words seemed to burn themselves into my mind, each one clearer than the last. My breath caught in my throat, and I read the sentence again, hoping I had misinterpreted it. But no, the words were right there, staring back at me, mocking me. I glanced back at the man, who remained silent, his face impassive. Claire's voice broke through the tension, soft and trembling. Jared, please just come inside. It's not what you think. I could barely focus on her. My hands were still gripping the letter, but I felt a sudden rush of heat flood through my body. What the hell was this? What did it mean? I took a step back, feeling the cold concrete beneath my feet, trying to process everything at once. You're not who you think you are. What was that supposed to mean? Who was I supposed to be if not the person I'd always thought I was? My mind was racing, my heart hammering in my chest as I tried to piece together the fragments of a reality that suddenly felt more fragile than ever. The man in the suit stepped forward, his voice low and calm. You don't have much time. You need to make a choice. His words hit me like a physical blow. A choice? What choice? My mind was spinning, the questions building up like a dam waiting to break. Choice? I asked, my voice hoarse. What choice? What are you talking about? Claire stepped forward then, her hand reaching for me, her eyes pleading. Please, Jared, don't listen to him. I'll explain everything. Just come inside. I turned to her then, my eyes narrowing. For the first time in years, I felt like I was seeing her clearly, truly seeing her. She wasn't just my wife anymore. She was a stranger, standing there with a look in her eyes that made my stomach churn. She was hiding something, and I knew it now. I could feel it in every word she said, in every movement she made. She was caught in a lie too big to cover up. I'm not going anywhere with you, I said, my voice steady now, despite the chaos inside me. Not until I understand what's going on. What's this all about, Claire? What do I need to know? She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the man in the suit cut her off. It's too late for explanations. The time for that has passed. I turned to him, fury rising in me. You don't get to speak to me like that. Who are you? And why the hell is she involved in this? He didn't flinch. His gaze never wavered. I'm just the messenger. Your wife isn't the one you need to worry about right now. His words struck me like a slap. What do you mean by that? I asked, taking a step toward him. Tell me everything. Now. He didn't respond immediately, just stood there, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he spoke, his words slow and deliberate, like he was savoring the moment. You're being watched, he said simply, by someone who has a vested interest in your actions, and you're running out of time to make the right choice. I didn't understand what he was saying, not fully, but something about his words sent a shiver down my spine. I looked back at Claire, but she didn't meet my eyes. She was staring at the ground, her face pale, her hands trembling. Jared, she whispered, her voice breaking. Please let it go. I felt a rush of anger, confusion, and disbelief. How long had this been going on? How long had Claire been keeping secrets from me? And what was this choice I was being forced to make? I clenched the letter in my hand, the paper crinkling under the pressure. You're not going to get away with this, I said through gritted teeth. None of you are. The man in the suit looked at me for a long moment, his eyes cold and calculating. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back to the SUV. He didn't look back, didn't hesitate. He just got in, and the car drove away, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there, frozen, my mind spinning, my heart racing. What the hell was happening? What had I just been dragged into? And why had Claire been so determined to keep me in the dark? I looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw nothing but a stranger standing in front of me. She was hiding something big, something dangerous, and I had a feeling I was about to find out just how deep the lies ran. The sound of the SUV fading into the night was the only thing that broke the silence. I stood there, holding the crumpled letter in my hand, staring at the spot where the man had been standing just moments ago. It felt like a dream, like some twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My mind was racing, but my body felt frozen, paralyzed by everything I'd just learned, or rather, everything I hadn't known. Claire was still standing in the doorway, her eyes wide, her face pale, as though the very ground beneath her was slipping away. She didn't move, not even when I turned to face her. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. She wasn't the woman I'd married. She was a stranger, Someone hiding things from me. Things I wasn't sure I even wanted to know. What is going on, Claire? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. It wasn't angry, but it was broken, like something inside me had snapped, and I was grasping at whatever remained of the man I used to be. What was all of this? Who was that guy? Why did he give me that letter? Her eyes flickered to the ground as though she couldn't bear to meet my gaze. I could see the tears brimming in her eyes, but they never fell. She opened her mouth as though to speak, but the words didn't come. It was like she was choking on her own lies, too afraid to tell me the truth. For the first time in years, I saw a vulnerability in her that I didn't know existed. It was like she was trying to keep a part of herself locked away from me, but the cracks were starting to show, and I didn't like what I saw. Jared, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want you to find out like this. I never wanted you to get involved. I took a step toward her, still holding the letter tightly in my hand. My heart was pounding in my chest, but there was no more room for confusion or hesitation. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Involved in what, Claire? What the hell is this all about? Who is Jenna? Who is watching me? What choice do I have to make? She shook her head slowly, her hands trembling at her sides. I can't tell you everything, she said, her voice strained. You don't understand. It's too dangerous for you. You don't know what they'll do if you get too close. If you keep asking the wrong questions, they'll come for you, too. Who will come for me? I demanded, frustration and fear bubbling up inside me. What is this, Claire? I've spent years with you, trusting you, and now you're telling me that I don't know who I am, that people are watching me? How could you hide this from me? What have you been involved in? Her face twisted in anguish, and for a moment, I saw the pain in her eyes, genuine, raw pain, and it was like a knife in my chest. I never wanted any of this, she said, tears finally spilling down her face. I thought I could protect you, keep you safe. But now it's too late. They've already noticed you. They know you're starting to question things, and it's only a matter of time before they come for you. My chest tightened at her words, a gnawing sense of dread spreading through my body. Who are they, Claire? Who's behind this? But before she could respond, there was another sound. A knock, soft but persistent, coming from the front door. My heart skipped a beat. The man in the suit? Another figure from the shadows? Or something worse? Claire's face drained of color. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes, as though everything we had just spoken about was about to come to a head. Jared, please. Don't answer it. Don't open the door. But it was too late. The knock sounded again, more urgent this time, as if whoever was on the other side had no intention of waiting. My body moved before I could think, the adrenaline in my veins pushing me toward the door. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn away, to lock myself inside and ignore everything that was happening, but I couldn't. Something was telling me that the truth, the whole truth, was standing just beyond that door. I gripped the handle, feeling the cold metal beneath my fingers. For a moment, I hesitated. I turned back to Claire, who was now standing in the middle of the living room, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to shield herself from whatever was coming. Her face was pale, her lips trembling as she mouthed one final plea. Please, Jared, don't. But I couldn't stop myself. I opened the door. Standing there in the doorway wasn't the man in the suit. It wasn't even someone I recognized. Instead, it was a woman. Tall, with dark hair and an intense gaze that made my heart skip a beat. She wore no coat, just a dark sweater and jeans. But there was something about her that made the cold air outside feel insignificant. She wasn't here for a conversation. She wasn't here to explain anything. She was here for something else entirely. I need to talk to you, Jared, she said, her voice calm but firm. It's time you learned the truth. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I could only stare at her, waiting for whatever was about to happen next. Claire was behind me now, but I could feel her presence, her silent anxiety pressing down on me, urging me to shut the door and ignore this woman. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not when I knew, deep down, that I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than myself. The woman stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the room with a cold precision, as though she had done this 100 times before. We don't have much time, she said, glancing briefly at Claire, who was now standing motionless, like a shadow in the corner. There are things you don't understand, things that you need to know before it's too late. I stepped back, my body still frozen in place. What are you talking about? What do you want from me? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Claire, her expression unreadable. There was a brief silence, and then, as if she had made a decision, she spoke again, her voice low. You're not who you think you are, Jared. And neither is she. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I took a step back, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. Not who I think I am. I repeated, my voice almost a whisper, as though speaking it aloud would somehow make it real. My pulse quickened, and my body felt heavy, weighed down by a growing sense of confusion and fear. The woman, standing tall and confident in front of me, took a slow step forward, her eyes piercing through me. There was no hesitation in her movements, no sign of uncertainty. She was in control, and that only made the tension in the room more suffocating. Claire, still frozen in the corner, looked pale, her hands trembling by her sides, but she didn't say a word. She only watched, her eyes wide, her lips pressed together in silence. You've been living a lie, Jared. The woman continued, her voice steady and cold, like she had delivered this message countless times before. Everything you thought you knew about yourself, about your life, it's all wrong. And it's time you knew the truth. I shook my head, trying to make sense of her words. Who are you? I asked, my voice finally firm, though there was an edge of panic in it. What do you want from me? What truth? She glanced over at Claire, then back to me, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes, but only for a moment. You need to understand, she said, her tone softer now, as though she was trying to break the news gently. It's not just about you. There's a much bigger picture. And Claire, well, she's a part of it too. I turned to Claire, my heart pounding in my chest. What is she talking about, Claire? I demanded, my voice rising. Why didn't you tell me? What's going on? Who is she? Claire's gaze dropped to the floor, her lips quivering as she struggled to find the words. I could see the weight of the moment crushing her, and the silence between us felt unbearable. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and fear. I never wanted you to be involved, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want you to know. It was supposed to stay hidden, Jared, for your own safety. I took a step toward her, my hands trembling. Safety? From what? From who? The woman stepped forward then, cutting off Claire before she could answer. It's not about who, she said, her gaze sharp. It's about what? I felt a chill run through me as her words sank in. What was she talking about? What wasn't about me? The pieces weren't fitting, and the questions kept piling up in my mind, each one more urgent than the last. But I could feel something else creeping in, an overwhelming sense that whatever this was, it was bigger than I could handle, that I had already crossed a line that couldn't be undone. You've been watched for a long time, Jared. The woman continued, her voice dropping to a low, almost conspiratorial whisper. By people who know everything about you. And Claire has been trying to protect you from them. But now, they've noticed you. They've started paying attention. I glanced at Claire, my eyes searching her face for any sign of understanding, but she only looked away, tears welling in her eyes. The room felt suffocating, and I was caught between the woman who stood in front of me, revealing things I wasn't prepared to hear, and Claire, who I had thought I knew better than anyone. What do you mean, notice me? What do you want from me? I asked again, my voice cracking with frustration. The woman let out a long breath, as though weighing the decision to continue. You're part of something much larger than you realize, Jared. Something that has been in motion for years. You were chosen long before you even knew. And now that you've started asking questions, they'll come for you. The only question is whether or not you'll be ready when they do. My heart skipped a beat. Chosen for what? I demanded, stepping forward, my mind spinning in circles. What the hell does that even mean? But the woman's eyes didn't waver. She simply looked at me, like she was sizing me up, measuring whether I was ready to hear the rest of the story. You've always had a role to play, Jared. One that's been planned for a long time. But now, the pieces are shifting, and it's up to you to decide where you fit in. I was beginning to feel like I was suffocating. This is insane, I muttered, stepping back. This can't be happening. What do you want from me? The woman's gaze softened, but only slightly. It's not what we want from you. It's what you choose to do next that matters. You're at a crossroads, Jared. You've got two paths. One leads to safety, the other leads to chaos. But neither one is guaranteed. I looked over at Claire, desperate for any answers, but she still wouldn't meet my eyes. She was silent, a prisoner in her own guilt. I could feel the weight of everything closing in on me. Her secret, the mystery of who I really was, the unknown danger I was about to face. "I don't understand," I said, feeling the pressure building in my chest. "What do I have to do?" The woman took another step forward, her presence overwhelming. "You'll have to choose, Jared. There's no going back after this." My heart raced, but I knew I was at the edge of something monumental. The truth was closer than ever, and yet, I was standing on the precipice, unable to take that first step. Claire's silence was deafening. The woman's words were echoing in my head, but none of it made sense. And then, just as I thought I might lose control, she said the one thing that stopped me dead in my tracks. "There's one more thing you need to know," she said, her voice grave. "The people who are watching you, they're closer than you think, and you've already met one of them." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She met my gaze, her expression unreadable. "Look behind you, Jared." I turned around, and my heart stopped cold in my chest. Standing in the doorway was the man in the black suit, watching me with that same impassive stare, as though he had never left. The air in the room suddenly thickened, as if every breath I took became heavier, laden with the weight of something unspeakable. My eyes darted to the doorway, my pulse quickening. There he stood, the man in the black suit, just as silent, just as foreboding as before. His cold eyes met mine, and for a moment, I was paralyzed. It was like time had stopped, the air between us frozen, as though something ancient and dangerous had just been awakened. Claire didn't move. She didn't even acknowledge him. It was as though he was invisible to her, like he had no real bearing on her world, but I knew better. He was a part of this. The same game, the same players. And whatever twisted reality I had just stepped into, he was in the middle of it. I couldn't help it. I turned to face the woman in front of me, my voice cracking with disbelief. "What the hell is this? Who are these people?" The woman didn't flinch. She didn't even look at the man in the doorway. Her gaze remained fixed on me, her voice quiet, but filled with a kind of knowing that sent a chill down my spine. "You were warned," she said, her words clipped and sharp. "You're in deeper than you realize, and you've been followed longer than you think." I swallowed hard, my mind reeling. "I don't care what you say, I need answers. Who is he?" I pointed to the man in the suit, unable to look away from him. "Why is he here?" The man in the suit stepped forward just a fraction, his eyes still locked on mine, and for the first time, I saw something shift behind those cold, emotionless eyes. A flicker of recognition, maybe, or something more dangerous. I wasn't sure, but the tension was unbearable. I could almost hear the click of a clock counting down, the pressure building as everything in my life seemed to unravel before me. "He's one of them," the woman said finally, her tone matter of fact, as though she had no intention of sugarcoating the truth. "He's the reason you're here, Jared. The reason all of this is happening." I took a step back, my breath shallow. I wanted to ask her more, but the words stuck in my throat. How could she say that? How could she just dismiss him like that, as if I wasn't about to lose everything? "You've been watched for months." The man in the suit spoke for the first time, his voice low and gravelly. "You don't know the half of it, Jared. You think your life has been normal, but it hasn't been. Not for a long time." Every word he spoke felt like a hammer striking the walls of my world, breaking everything I thought was true. I looked at Claire, desperate for her to say something, to explain, but she remained silent, her face pale and unreadable, as though she was bracing herself for something terrible. Her eyes flickered briefly to the man in the suit, then back to me, but she still said nothing. "Explain. Now," I demanded, my voice shaking. "What the hell is going on? What do you know about me? About her?" I gestured toward Claire, my voice filled with a mix of anger and confusion. The woman stepped toward me now, closing the distance between us with purposeful strides. She was no longer speaking in riddles, no longer circling the truth like a game. The expression on her face was grim, and the finality in her voice was unmistakable. "You were never meant to know, Jared," she said softly. "You were always a part of this, but you were supposed to stay in the dark. Claire, she tried to protect you. She tried to keep you away from the truth, from the danger that's closing in." I turned sharply toward Claire, my anger rising again. "You've been lying to me, hiding things from me this whole time? For what? To protect me? What kind of protection is this?" What's so dangerous about the truth? Claire finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling. Jared, I never wanted this for you. I never wanted you to be part of this world. But you are, whether you like it or not. I felt like the ground was slipping out from beneath me. Nothing made sense. Everything I had believed, every certainty I had about my life, was now in question. I was just a man, standing in my own home, trying to make sense of the chaos that had suddenly become my reality. The life I thought I knew, my marriage, my job, my existence, was all a lie. And I had no idea what the next step was. The man in the suit didn't move, didn't blink. He watched me with cold, calculating eyes, like he was waiting for something, or perhaps testing me. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he spoke again. You've been in the middle of this for years, he said, his voice so calm, it made my skin crawl. You just didn't know it. But now, it's time to make your choice. My heart pounded in my chest. Choice? What choice? You said that before. What the hell does that mean? The woman glanced at the man, then back at me. There are two paths, Jared. One will lead you into the truth, and the other will keep you in the dark. One will give you the answers you're seeking, and the other will keep you safe. But there's no going back once you make your decision. I could feel the weight of her words sinking in, their meaning pressing down on me, suffocating me. She was offering me something, but I didn't know if I could trust her. I didn't know if I even wanted to know what lay beyond this door. But I couldn't back out now. The truth was out there, and even if it destroyed everything, I had to find it. What happens if I choose the wrong path? I asked, my voice quieter now, more uncertain. The woman's lips curled into something that might have been a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's the thing, Jared. There are no wrong choices, just consequences. And with that, the room seemed to close in on me. The man in the suit was still standing there, his gaze never leaving me, as if he was waiting for me to crack. Claire was silent again, her face unreadable. I was caught in a web, a trap I hadn't even seen coming, and now, the only thing I could do was choose the direction I would take. But as the seconds stretched on, I realized that I didn't even know where I was supposed to go anymore. The truth was within my reach, but it felt like it was slipping away. And soon, it would be too late to turn back. The room was suffocating, the air thick with unspoken tension. Every second felt like an eternity as the man in the suit stood still, his cold eyes never wavering from mine. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, my heart beating faster with each passing moment. Claire stood in the corner, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her gaze averted, as if she couldn't bear to look at me anymore. I looked at her, hoping for some kind of reassurance, something that could make sense of this nightmare. But she remained silent, a ghost in her own home. Her expression was distant, as though she was already lost to the world that was slowly unraveling before me. I could feel the weight of her secret pressing down on me, but now I was more focused on the man in the suit, the one who held the answers I so desperately needed. He spoke again, his voice low, steady, almost predatory. Time is running out, Jared. The choice is yours, but understand this. Once you make it, there is no going back. The consequences will follow you for the rest of your life. There's no undoing what's already been set in motion. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. I had thought I had control, that I could fix whatever was wrong with my life, but now I saw how little I actually knew. The world I had lived in, the life I had built, was a house of cards, fragile and ready to collapse. I turned back to Claire. What is this? I asked again, the frustration building inside me. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me about all this? She flinched at my words, but still, she didn't respond. I could see the guilt written all over her face, but it didn't make things better. It only made me feel more betrayed. How could she have kept this from me? How could she have hidden something so massive, so terrifying, from the person she claimed to love? Claire's voice finally broke the silence, barely above a whisper. I didn't want to drag you into this, Jared, she said, her eyes flickering up to meet mine, then quickly falling back to the ground. I thought I could keep you safe. But now, she trailed off, her words fading as though she couldn't bring herself to finish. The woman standing in front of me, the one who had been explaining all of this in pieces, interrupted. It's too late for safety now, she said. The danger is already here, whether you accept it or not. I felt my pulse quicken. What danger? From who? What do they want with me? The questions were tumbling out of me, and I couldn't stop them. The pieces of my reality were falling apart, and I couldn't put them back together. Claire's involvement in this was never supposed to be part of your life. But it is. And now, you must decide where you stand. I couldn't breathe. I stared at her, my mind reeling, trying to process what she was saying. Born into this. What plan? What the hell was she talking about? What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain calm. What plan? The woman's lips curled into something that might have been a smile, but it wasn't warm. It was cold, calculating, as though she had expected me to ask the question. There are organizations, groups, ones that have been watching you since you were a child. They chose you, Jared. They've been grooming you for something. But now, you have a choice. The weight of her words crashed over me. Grooming me for what? I asked, my voice rising. You keep saying I have a choice, but what does that even mean? What is it that I have to choose? The man in the suit finally stepped forward, his movements slow, deliberate, and yet somehow, they made the room feel even smaller. He stopped just a few feet away from me, his presence like a shadow that swallowed the light. What you need to decide, Jared, he said, his voice cold as steel, is whether you want to embrace the truth or walk away from it. You cannot hide from this anymore. You never could. I took a step back, my mind racing. Truth? What truth? I was drowning in a sea of questions, and with each answer I received, more questions emerged. Who were these people? What was the truth they were talking about? And what did they want with me? The woman stepped forward, taking my hand gently, as though guiding me through some invisible barrier. The truth, Jared, she said, her voice soft but urgent, is that your life has always been a lie. Your family, your friends, your entire world, it was all constructed for you. But now you have the opportunity to see beyond the veil, to step into the real world. If you accept, if you choose to take the path toward the truth, everything will change. You'll finally understand your place in all of this. I shook my head, the weight of it all threatening to crush me. I don't understand any of this. I'm just a man, a normal guy. How could any of this be real? Normal, the man in the suit repeated with a small, almost imperceptible smile. None of us are normal, Jared. Not anymore. The air seemed to shift as I processed his words, and it became clear. There was no going back. The door had been opened, and I couldn't close it. The truth was out there, waiting for me, and now I had to choose whether or not I was ready to face it. I turned back to Claire, who was still standing in the corner, her eyes full of regret and fear. She was waiting for me to decide, for me to choose the path. But what if the truth was more than I could handle? What if the consequences of knowing it were worse than living in the dark? I felt the walls closing in again, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. There was no easy way out. Whatever I chose now, I couldn't undo. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked at the woman in front of me. All right, I said, my voice steady, even though my mind was screaming. I'll choose, but you better be ready to tell me everything. No more secrets. The woman nodded, a faint glimmer of approval in her eyes. You've made your choice, Jared. Now, let's see where it takes you. And just like that, everything changed. The game had begun, and there was no turning back. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, as the room seemed to shrink around me. The weight of the choice I had made settled heavily on my shoulders. The woman in front of me nodded once, as if my decision was exactly what she had expected, and yet, her face softened. For the first time, there was a hint of something almost human, something that wasn't just cold calculation. You've chosen the truth, she said quietly. It's the hardest path, but it's also the one that leads to freedom. I didn't know what to expect. For all I knew, this could be the beginning of something worse. The man in the suit, the one who had been lurking in the shadows, watched me closely but said nothing. His silence felt like the calm before a storm, and I half expected him to strike, to reveal some terrifying secret that would leave me shattered. But instead, something unexpected happened. Claire, who had been standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. Her face was still pale, but there was something else in her eyes now, something that had been absent before. Determination. Hope. She walked to me slowly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she reached out and took my hand. I'm sorry, she said softly, her voice trembling. I never wanted you to get involved in this mess. I didn't want to drag you into the danger, but I see now that it wasn't my choice to make. I've been protecting you from the truth, but I can't protect you from this anymore. We're in this together now." I looked at her, my heart swelling with a mixture of relief and sadness. We had been drifting apart for so long, both of us carrying secrets and unspoken fears. But in this moment, I realized something profound. The only way forward was together. Whatever had been hidden from me, whatever this truth was, it didn't matter as long as I had her by my side. The woman in front of me seemed to understand. Her expression softened, and she stepped aside, making space for Claire and me to stand together. "You've made the hardest decision," she said, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. "The truth is a powerful thing, Jared. But now, you'll be free to make your own path. The rest of it is up to you." I turned to face Claire, squeezing her hand gently. For the first time, the weight that had been pressing on me for so long began to lift. We were no longer hiding from each other. We had faced the darkness together, and now we were ready for whatever came next. And then, without warning, the man in the suit spoke, his voice calm and steady. "We've watched you long enough. You've passed the test." I stared at him, unsure of what he meant, but the woman stepped forward, her eyes fixed on me with a quiet smile. "You've earned the right to know everything. The truth about who you are, about your past, and about what your future holds. But more importantly, Jared, you've earned your freedom." For the first time, I felt the real weight of the decision I had made. This wasn't just about uncovering secrets. It was about choosing to live without fear, without the burden of lies. It was about stepping into the unknown, but knowing that I wasn't alone. And in that moment, everything seemed to make sense. "You've chosen to embrace who you truly are," the woman said, her voice warm now, like a distant memory coming to life. "And with that choice comes the power to change everything." And just like that, the man in the suit nodded, his expression unreadable, but there was a slight shift in his posture, as though he was finally seeing something he hadn't expected. He turned and walked toward the door, the woman following him. They didn't need to say another word. It was clear that their part in my story had ended. Claire and I stood there, together, hand in hand. The world outside the door, the world we had been so afraid of facing, seemed less daunting now. There was no longer a wall between us. Whatever came next, we would face it together. "I don't know what's ahead of us," I said, looking into her eyes, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "But I do know that we'll face it as a team." She smiled, her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in so long: hope. "I'm with you, Jared. Always." As the door closed behind us, a new chapter of our lives began, one where the truth no longer loomed over us like a shadow. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were ready to live, to make our own choices, to create a future built on trust, understanding, and the knowledge that no matter what happened, we were in this together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally free.